Welcome to Little Detours with Regina Brett, where we help you create a life you love out of the life you have. Thanks for joining me. I'm your host, Regina Brett. Nothing stops Jon Sedor. Nothing. When he lost his dominant hand to an accident at 18 years old, he trained his other hand to write, type, and draw, and make art, and surf, and rock climb. Yes, rock climb. We're talking the Grand Teton. Nothing stops Jon, not even a diagnosis of brain cancer. He got busy living deeper, louder, and bolder. In spite of radiation and chemo treatments, he's been busy creating murals to inspire and challenge people to do more and to be more. Jon is a graphic artist who specializes in graphic design and street art. He was born in Cleveland, Ohio in May 1988. He became fascinated with the art world of skateboarding, BMX, and graffiti culture when he was 13. In high school, he decided to pursue art as a career. After he lost his hand, he still graduated from Skidmore College in New York as a studio art major. He studied at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, then graduated from the School of Visual Arts in Manhattan with a master's in fine arts. Jon currently lives and works in Cleveland. He's here to talk about how to live a life without limits. Jon, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
You know, I go to Van Aken a lot. My family lives in Shaker Heights, my grandkids. And we go to the new Market Hall place, and there's that giant mural that you painted. Tell us why you chose to do that piece of art that way.
Well, the client, who was Van Aken, they wanted the mural to be as interactive as possible, which is a challenge in of itself because it's a flat wall. So I thought originally of trying to do an illusion, but then I somehow, because a lot of my influence comes from vintage or Americana tattoo culture. So I was something about Coney Island and probably me living in Brooklyn, like the old school strongman posters. It just seemed to work along with the kind of lettering. So that lettering is I created myself. It's a knockoff of a Americana tattoo, but I added my own little pieces. And then yeah, I just, I didn't want to put a specific skin tone color. So the blue was intentional. I wanted everyone to feel like they could approach it and not feel like it wasn't put there for them. So the cartoon, I guess, skin color was very intentional. That is a diverse area. And especially with recent things going on in our society, I didn't want to exclude anyone or even have that mural bring up that conversation because it's not what I'm trying to say in any means.
Right. So the mural, for anybody who's not seen it, it's almost like muscle arms that are arms.
Yeah,
You can stand in front of it, and it's like those arms are yours.
yeah, it's like sort of a redo of the where you stick your head through the hole, at like a carnival, and
Right,
your,
right.
your image changes, so to speak.
And the words say, "Together we are stronger." And why did you pick those words?
I think it's extremely true in all the sense. I wouldn't be where I'm at if I didn't have throughout all my challenges and successes a group of people and individuals in my life that believed in me when I didn't. And I think more now than ever, community matters the most, especially in a time with the pandemic when we have to be separated. Humans are pack animals, really, historically. That's why they lived in tribes. And it's a weird notion to feel very isolated when you're living in a city.
I never thought of it that way, that we are like, they talk about dogs being pack animals, but
Sure.
humans, and the idea of tribes being so much of our long ago history of human beings.
Yes, but I still think that instinct is there. You want to be around people, you want to be around friends, family, and in this case, you kind of can't be,
Yeah.
depending on your situation.
How long did it take you to paint that? It's pretty big.
I think it was 4 or 5 days, but a couple of those days it was still snowing, so I did what I could, and before the paint froze.
You
So
use pros?
I didn't mind it completely because I was moving and moving ladders, but that was a challenge, and the wind especially. That's why I didn't choose spray paint. It's normally what I would work in, but I was scared if like there are gusts of wind that come around that building, it would just spray it across the building face where I shouldn't get paint, and it's not removable. So I didn't want to take that chance and then have to apologize to Van Aken about their
Paint
building that they
everywhere.
overspray. Yeah.
So, John, let's talk about the first kind of major detour in your life. It was your last with the high school. You went to a private school, university school. And like so
Yeah.
many of us, I mean, myself included, we used to always kind of goof around with fireworks. I have 5 brothers and 5 sisters, and it's amazing that we're all still alive when I think of some of the crazy things we did. But you were with some guys, and you had firecrackers, some kind of explosive device, and it went off in your hand. Can you
Yep.
tell us what you're comfortable talking about that moment?
Honestly, it was just an accident. I know a couple of the guys I were with, and these were guys I'd known for a couple of years. I rode BMX with them. I worked with them actually at the indoor skate park where I got hurt. I got hurt in the back parking lot. And it was after hours. We were all really over 18 at the time. So the owner and his son, who was also a senior in high school, would let us stay after hours to ride. I mean, it's not like we did anything bad.
Right.
Um, and it just was a happenstance. A friend of a friend that I had only met once before showed up with some fireworks.
Mm.
Um, and no one talked me into anything or anything like that. I think it was just, I wasn't, 99% of the people get away with those things. And I was the unfortunate 1%.
Right.
Uh, yeah, that had to be taught a lesson.
Well, but you know what I want to make sure is clear is that we've all, I mean, almost all everybody
I
I've known,
don't think it's anything out of
it's
the
not like any
ordinary.
big deal. But for you, it was life changing, like in a flash, literally a flash.
It was a millisecond. I mean, I remember a lot of it. I'm not really uncomfortable speaking about it, but I mean, the important thing I took away, it really just astounded me just how fast everything can change. It was just like one naive decision as a, you know, uh, guy going off to college,
Yeah.
to art school. And then in an instant, I couldn't really ride BMX anymore. I was going to have to switch hands if I wanted to do art. And I sort of had me trying to figure out my life all over again. Obviously, I stuck with the art part, but it took a while to sort of find myself again in terms of activities.
I wonder about that time period when you kind of felt lost, because when you get out of high school, there's this kind of blueprint of what you think is going to happen next, and
Sure.
suddenly the blueprint's gone. So, what what helped you most during that time to kind of come to a new sense of what John's going to do now?
I honestly think my parents, my brother, they never really told me like you got to switch what you're going to do. They never ever in my life, I mean, within reason, stopped me from being me. And I'm way out there compared to what you think of most US kids. I'm very tattooed, and I chose art, not like a business or doctoral or lawyer kind of path. And also I need to mention as well my advisor from university school, Carl Frericks, and my art teacher at the time. His name's Chris. Oh, I'm blanking on his last name, of course. But long story short, they were basically the second people to visit me in the hospital at Metro Health.
Hmm.
And Chris, my art teacher, worked with me all summer and wouldn't take money to sort of relearn. I would, and then I'd use on my own time, which was extremely boring, is take articles from the newspaper and just copy them word for word to relearn how to write. And yeah, but I didn't quite ever fit in at US, but I think if it wasn't for like Mr. Frericks and Chris Davis, I probably wouldn't have made it through high school. I wasn't traditionally interested in school.
You found your niche, and I love that art became your place and still is.
Yeah, very much. It's my outlet. It's sort of saved my life. Um, it's hard to describe and really put it into words, but I was getting into trouble a lot my freshman year. I had very bad grade point average. And it wasn't like I did anything that bad. I just didn't like school.
Hmm.
And yeah, Mr. Frerick set me down one day and he's like, well, what do you like to do outside of school? So I like graffiti and I like BMX, and not thinking he would respond in a positive way. And he goes, well, let's get you into an art class. And the hockey coach and I at US didn't always see eye to eye. And when you don't do team sports, you got to do weightlifting with him. So I was always the one to instigate him because it was just so easy to get on his nerves. And Mr. Frericks actually set up I could ride BMX for gym credit after school. So I was allowed to go ride my bike for hours every day or skateboard and be me while at the same time still having teachers and people around me that cared about what happened to me.
That's beautiful, John. And John, I wonder, so you lost your dominant left hand. You had to learn to really make your right hand your dominant hand. When did you know, yes, I'll be able to do art again? Was there like a moment where you're like,
I
okay?
don't even think I still know that. I wouldn't say there was one clear moment. I think in time my brain just sort of adapted. And I didn't really have a choice. You can't really tiptoe around the fact that, when you lose your dominant hand, it's not like I can slowly ease into living as an opposite handed person. I just had to do it. And I figured out ways how to do things. And, Skidmore College offered to give me a note taker and stuff. And I didn't take it because I also knew from my own experience, if I was given the out from having to pay attention, I wouldn't pay attention. So
Yeah,
it made me grow up in a lot of ways.
sure, sure. The other thing that I'm so amazed at is that you were into rock climbing, and 4 years after your accident, you had said to yourself, "I'm not going to be as strong as I used to be." Weren't sure you could do it, and you ended up quitting smoking because you wanted to get your lungs stronger. Tell me about, how do you rock climb with one hand? How do you use that other arm? Is it part of
More
your
the tool for
technique?
balance and pushing off. I mean, and sort of, and it's not conscious. I think sometimes in the moment I do things in a way that works for me, but if you had asked me like about doing that beforehand, I would have never thought to do it. Um, my mind just kind of adapted to it, and there's still a lot of things I can't climb because of my condition, especially in a rock gym. I work at a rock gym 1 day a week, climb Cleveland and Tremont, and not a lot of those routes are something like realistic for me to do. And before, when I was younger, I would sort of try and like kill myself trying to do everything because I want to be limited.
Right.
And as I got older and after some injuries with my neck and back just from pushing so hard when I was a sponsored climber
Mhm.
and doing things for companies, that I sort of learned you just got to accept your situation. And it's not always easy. I'm very stubborn. Sure, my mom can attest to that. Um, but I think there's also, you got to know when to push and you got to know when to back off. And that's something I learned just trial and error, if I'm being honest.
So when you were at your lowest, you've lost your hand, you're gonna wanted to be an artist, everybody's probably going off to college and you're in a hospital figuring it all out. When you were at your lowest, is there anything that helped you the most? You talked about your support of your family and friends, but is there anything you kind of had to draw from within you that like rebooted you?
I just kept looking forward. I don't know why. It's just sort of how I've always been, I guess. And I didn't learn that really until I lost my hand and was seen as, I guess, different
Mhm.
in a sense. And it is interesting because the time I lost my hand was sort of the height of the Iraq war and Afghanistan war. So a lot of people assume I'm a veteran. I'm not. It's a bad accident, and I never would say I was. But it took a while for me to feel comfortable with myself.
And I love that idea of looking forward, because so many of us look in the rearview mirror. What if I had this? What if, all the what ifs, and they just stay stuck. But you just like, let me just, all right, this is who I am now. Let's move on.
And don't get me wrong, I tried for probably about 3 or 4 years after losing my hand to still ride BMX, and it just wasn't happening.
Mhm.
Um, I was trying to develop prosthetics, and it just got expensive because health insurance doesn't want to cover those things. And the technology's just not there. It's kind of crazy, like all that your body can take. I would break prosthetics doing simple tricks just because your body would like know how to absorb that impact through all the muscles and tissues. And a prosthetic's rigid, it's metal. and carbon fiber, and it it's incredibly hard to mimic what a hand can do.
Right. John, I want to talk a little bit about you ended up teaching art. You got an opportunity to be an artist in residence at the Cleveland School of the Arts. So
Yep.
you got your hand back, your right hand to be creative. And here you are in the inner city teaching kids. What was that experience like for you?
Oh, that was awesome. And I sort of fell into that. I was working at a different local rock gym at the time, sort of stepping away from my sponsors and just politely bowing out. I was burned out and sort of disillusioned with the industry at the time. And a current member at that rock gym said, "Hey, you're an artist." I said, "You should come teach. Like, try teaching an art class." And I'm like, "I don't have a teaching degree." He goes, "But you have a master's, so it doesn't matter. Like, you're not going to be a district art teacher, like an artist in resident." And I was hired 4 days before the school year started, having never done this before, let alone with high school kids in a inner city high school,
Mm-hmm.
kids with very, very real issues every day and in their communities.
Right.
And I just sort of felt like jumped into it, and I just had my style. And I think I'm not probably what you would picture as a normal teacher. And I think the kids sort of saw that, and it just, as time moved on, those kids felt like they were my own kids, and I'm still in touch with some of them. And
Mm-hmm.
I had one student who would call me dad as a joke, but like, I taught a street art class, so I was kind of also in my element. And if you behaved, you got to use spray paint. So it was a
Normal is highly overrated. They probably love somebody like you that could come in there and really meet them
yeah.
where they're at.
When I left after my second year, when I was moved down to Florida for a bit, one of my students said it's a big loss because it's the only place that the kids felt like they could be themselves.
Wow.
I wasn't really big on, within reason, censoring kids, and a lot of the themes we explored had to very much do with issues in our city, like, unfortunately, police brutality, racism.
Right.
And, I let the kids express themselves. If they had a reason behind doing something, I'm not going to stop them.
Yeah.
And I told the principal straight up, like, if they need to get this out, it's better they do it on a painting versus a more unhealthy way on the street.
That is a good point. Well, John, we are at the halfway mark already. I want to pause and I want to thank you for listening to Little Detours with Regina Brett. We have John Sedor as my guest today. I know you have many podcast choices, and I'm really grateful you chose to listen to mine. John, let's move into, you moved to Florida, you're in St. Petersburg, and you started to get migraines. Tell us about your health journey, how that started.
I honestly thought just me growing up in the north, and it's like so heavy and humid down there, I wasn't used to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I just always assumed I'd take some Excedrin if it was bad enough, drink more water, and it would go away. So I never thought anything of it. And that would happen on and off. When I was working in the school I worked in for a year down there, it was a much more high stressful environment. It was a behavioral unit, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So for really troubled kids, and it was elementary school, but just kind of like not having any support in terms of like your coworkers are tired, the administration is trying to just keep the district off their backs. So like they don't really, as long as it looks good on paper, they're okay with it.
Right.
And my migraines got worse during that, and I just figured it was from the stress. Again, I really did care about those kids. I have 500 students, and
Yeah.
taught every single one of them, and I knew every single one of them by name. It was hard. A lot of my kids were in the system,
Mm-hmm.
and being in foster care, you're just transferred sort of around the county. So I would have students switching all the time. There was no consistency, or I'd have students that didn't speak English and came, can't remember quite what happened, but something happened in South America. So we had an influx of a couple students to my school specifically from, I believe it was Ecuador and Guatemala, no English, but they also, what I didn't know in my own sort of naivete, is there are still villages that have traditional languages there. So my Spanish speaking students couldn't even communicate with them. And I had to find a way on my own, as yes, a white guy with no Spanish skills,
Right.
to communicate, let alone the Spanish is irrelevant because it's a village dialect.
Right.
And it was challenging in a lot of ways, but I wouldn't change that experience. I mean, they're good kids, just in unfortunate situations. And I taught sort of the older versions of them.
Yeah.
I just had to learn how to communicate with younger minds. Like a high school kid, you can reason with. A little kid, you
Right.
got to get it out in about three words, or you've lost them.
Right. So in this time, you're doing all that, and it's a lot to juggle. You're getting these migraines, and then one night you had a seizure.
Yes, about a year ago, actually, this
Okay, a
weekend.
year ago. And that's when they found a mass.
Yeah, they did a CT scan when I was brought into the ER.
So that's another moment, that millisecond moment of, they come to you and tell you, were you alone when you found out, or was your girlfriend with you?
I don't actually quite remember. I
Okay.
was pretty out of it for a while.
Yeah.
I don't think they told me till the next day, but I didn't also think I didn't understand the big deal. I thought it was just a tumor. I didn't really understand what that meant in its entirety.
Right. And you're like 31 at the time, right? Last year, 31.
Yeah, 31, just
So
turned 31.
and you're like deep into life helping these students, and suddenly you have a mass about the size of a softball in your frontal lobe. And they're
Yeah,
telling
right.
you everything's going to change here. Glioblastoma, is that the technical diagnosis?
They brought it up in Florida, but again, they didn't. All they did was a CT, so they couldn't confirm it. I mean, the ER doc and the neurosurgeon that was at the hospital I was at in St. Pete said you really have to, get it out and see what it is. The hope is that it wasn't going to be as bad as it is because I'm young.
Mm-hmm.
But again, they couldn't say either way because they would have had to have done the surgery, and they didn't feel like they were equipped to do that. And basically, I think it was the ER doc, I can't quite remember, but told my mom he's got to be at a cancer center for this.
So you came back home to Cleveland, where we have the world-renowned Cleveland Clinic. Thank goodness we have great healthcare in Cleveland. And you had surgery. They got as much as they could, but brain cancer is different. They don't have clear borders, I understand, like the other cancers.
No, it's sort of like tentacles. It spreads throughout. So even though they got what they wanted out, there's still very much remnants of it in me.
So what kind of treatments have you had to have that you've been through these last few months?
About maybe a month or so. Yeah, almost to the day after my surgery, I started 6 weeks of radiation, 5 days a week, every day.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, 7 days a week, taking Temodar, which is the chemotherapy used for brain cancer.
Okay.
And I wasn't too affected. By the end of it, I was pretty tired, and they said that was normal. So I'd sleep most of the day just because of the radiation and combination of chemo. I got a month off, which was nice. Started to kind of feel normal again, and then I started, I think it was 6 rounds of chemo. And then they added the Optune device.
And that's something you wear on your head.
I have it on now. I mean, it's just like I have to keep my head shaved, but it's like called tumor treating fields, and basically, from my very limited understanding, it disrupts the cells from replicating. Whatever, I think it uses magnetic fields, so it's not like a pocket-sized radiation thing. It's like, and I don't really have side effects from it.
Okay.
So but they did up my chemo during.
It sends out kind of electric.
Yeah, and they're like stickers. I mean, they're adhesives. I mean, I gotta take them off, and then change them out, reshave my head about every 2 days.
Okay.
It's honestly not the worst thing in the world. I agreed to do it, and I would have to be honest. Like after I got fitted and started wearing it, I was like, I already have one hand. Why did I add something else to hang off of me? Like I have a battery pack that I get to carry around.
Oh, you have to wear a battery pack too?
Oh yes, and change the battery if I'm not plugged in. So it's like everything changed again with this treatment, because then it's like I can't take off for a week to go climb or go surf. I have to be aware of how long the thing's off of me, because they want it on all the time. I mean, it's really only effective if you wear it 18 hours a day. And then I need someone to help me get it back on.
Okay.
because I can't get it. There's like a specific map they did to my situation. So everybody is a little bit different way that the arrays or stickers are laid out. And
So,
yeah, it's just, it can be a pain sometimes.
so you had some rough chemo though. You lost like 45 pounds.
Yeah, about 35, 40, I
You're
think.
not a
Yeah.
big guy. I mean, that's a lot of weight to lose.
Yeah, yeah, that was, wasn't on purpose.
Right.
I would say a lot of it happened the first round when they first upped my chemo dosage.
Yeah.
I was so not affected or made sick by
Mhm.
the like the initial 6 weeks. I didn't realize upping it, and then they literally doubled it again after that because
Yeah.
I had to be at, I guess, a certain dosage for my body mass.
Hmm.
But I mean, the first 3 days, because I take it 5 days on, then 28 days off. So it's like these weird 28-day cycles.
Right.
And
Yeah.
by the time that 28-day sort of was coming to an end, I'd actually feel sort of normal again. But then I had to go back on.
Yeah.
And so it was a lot of like ups and downs physically
Yeah.
and mentally. And I used to be a pretty active person. And so I'm getting better at it, but just balancing, treatments with living my life. And
Hmm. Now, glioblastoma, it's one of the I hate to say scary cancers, but it is. They don't have a great prognosis. How do you kind of make peace with that big unknown? I mean, we all have some kind of expiration date in our lives, and
yeah,
nobody really knows when it is. But when you get that kind of diagnosis, how do you kind of go on like planning a future, but really not knowing how long do you get? Do you know what I mean?
figure, I guess, like it's hard to say. I mean, some days I don't think about it because I do hear a lot of people living a lot longer. And then, sometimes falling asleep, it's like, wow, like, I'm coming up on technically when most people would be dead, after a year to it's 12 to 18 months. And I'm hoping that obviously isn't me, but you just don't know. I mean, really, I only can wear the Optune until it stops working.
Right.
So if my tumors start growing back or growing elsewhere in my brain, then there's no point for me to wear the Optune anymore. And I don't know what the next step is. I haven't asked because I really hope it doesn't hit that point. I hope there's some treatments that come along where I don't have to experience that situation.
Right. Right. So, John, in the meantime, you're still creating. I mean,
Yeah,
do you feel like more of a fire in you to create, or I mean, has the cancer treatment changed anything about how you do your art?
yeah, I would say a lot before this situation. I kind of fell back on teaching and, was sort of like, oh, I'm not that good. So I'll just, not take that risk in a sense. And then I don't know, when I got diagnosed, I just wanted to see what I could do with it. So just, hoping I can prove myself in a sense more to myself than anyone else.
Well, like you're leaving your mark in huge ways. You have uh, a mural in Edgewater that you painted on the banks of Lake Erie. You have the one in Shaker Heights, and I
Yep.
I hear you're working on a third 12 by 25-foot indoor mural at the Music Settlement.
Oh, that was the second one I did. So I
Oh, that was
finished
the
that one
second.
up. Yeah, Edgewater was the most recent.
Okay.
And I got that up in a few days. It just around because it is right on the water almost. I had to figure out a good sealant just so it's protected. Normally, I wouldn't do that.
Mhm.
The next mural I have coming out is actually in Chattanooga, Tennessee, at the beginning of October.
So you're going to go down there to paint it?
But I think 24 by 23-foot wall.
So when you're painting a giant wall like that, are you like in a zone that's different than the cancer zone, like back home kind of?
Yeah,
Do you feel like you get to climb into like a different world, so to speak?
kind of, yeah. I mean, I have my headphones and I'm in my own world and it's peaceful. And, I'm just focused on what I think is the right steps to take for the mural. So I'll break it down into sort of doable steps. And then depending on actually what I have to do. And, from there, that's really all I'm concerned with is, meeting those sort of deadlines I've given myself.
Mhm.
And normally I can get a wall up. Edgewater went pretty quick. I mean, that was like 3 days, and
And
that
what
was
did you
3 walls.
and what did you paint at Edgewater? Can you describe it for people who won't be able to
It's sort of like
see?
abstracted waves. It's already up on my portfolio, my art
Okay.
website.
We'll have a
And
link to that on my website too at the end of the show. I'll mention that. So people can go see
cool.
your art. And the one you're doing in Chattanooga, what's the theme? Do you have a, like in your mind how it's going to play out already?
Yeah, so the one in Chattanooga, the Edgewater one was more open. I think the husband and wife I did it for, they're water people, so they wanted some sort of water theme, and that works for me because I surf. I surf on the lakes and stuff in the winter, and that one sort of came together organically. The one I'm doing in Chattanooga is a buddy of mine who I met when I was doing the adaptive climbing competitions, and we had a couple of overlapping sponsors. But his day job is building prosthetic legs. So he was originally in Orlando, moved to Tennessee, and opened his own prosthetic business. And I did his logo and branding and all that stuff. And he really wanted the mural, but this is more in a sense to be uplifting to people going through very dramatic changes in terms of amputations. So uh, I've been working on some concepts, and we haven't narrowed it down to one just yet. But basically, it's trying to celebrate a journey of healing
It seems like
in whatever sense that is.
okay. What I like is what you did in Shaker was really kind of like finding your strength again and helping people kind of feel strong. And this one is about healing. It seems like there's a bit of your life kind of timeline or your life flow in your art. Does it feel like that to you?
Kind of, I guess. I think it's just the clients I've had.
Mhm.
Um, but it feels true to me, and that's more what I care about. Like if
Right.
someone hired me to do something that I knew wasn't right for me, I'd tell them that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, John, we just have a couple minutes left. I wonder, like, what kind of things do you do for yourself every day that really help you kind of go through everything you're going through and a lot of the unknown that's ahead of you? You talked about kind of moving forward, and forward is kind of a big unknown. So, what things do you do that help you stay present and really just kind of live joyfully whatever is going on?
I don't know if I do it every day, but I try and be active. It's a little bit more challenging now. Just working around the Optune and having to switch stuff out. Uh, if I get a chance, I'll ride my bike. Um, that brings me a lot of peace. And yeah, I mean, I don't ride BMX anymore, but I still like riding bikes. It depends, like last weekend I went surfing with some friends, and activity helps sort of center me, I guess you could say, and that's always been that way since I was a kid. But it's important to me that I draw every day. Not even like I'm talking in terms of for designs for clients or anything. I've been doing just sketchbook stuff, things I want to sort of challenge myself with.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and I'll come up with these weird ideas and try and make it happen. Like turn a while back, I turned a Caravaggio painting into a tattooable design of his Medusa one. But I don't know. I just wanted to see if I could do it. It wasn't like for any reason other than I wanted to do it. And
Yeah.
when I'm doing that, it brings me peace.
You're also wearing a hat from your Pebble Wrestler collective. You have a
Yes,
website with
it's I occasionally will release apparel and design stuff.
And,
Uh,
yeah, tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll close. So, what is it when you say Pebble Wrestler? It's a nickname for climbers. Is that what that is?
it was like a nickname years ago for a type of climbing known as bouldering, which is like unroped. You climb boulders, not big cliffs,
Hmm.
and that's sort of where I focused my climbing career. And I felt like a lot of times, and I still feel this way, the industry is getting so serious and sort of like Hollywood. Like, when I was
Yeah.
younger, climbing movies and stuff, I mean, no one did this stuff. So I was like really out there. I think there's maybe three of us in high school or under mid-20s that climbed at the Cleveland Rock Gym when I was in high school, and I did that as well. Obviously, I had both hands then, but I just wanted to bring back that fun element with solid designs and comfortable clothing, and I try and pull influences from art history if possible. So color and everything is intentional. But yeah, it was sort of my way to, it's in a weird way, not make what the company side of it was become so exclusive, and bring it back to what it used to be. And it was really just a bunch of us having fun climbing rocks in the woods. I mean,
Yeah.
it didn't it didn't matter how good or bad you were. You know, there weren't all the magazines, or Instagram didn't exist.
Right,
So
right. You could just, it was for the pure joy of it, it sounds like.
yeah, and I'm trying to kind of bring that back, build a collective of artists, snowboarders and climbers, and produce apparel that hopefully people like wearing.
That sounds great. Well, John, I got to close. My biggest takeaway today is that idea of really looking forward, moving forward, and not spending too much time in that kind of rear view mirror of life. And I always ask my guests to close with the answer to this question. What is the best thing you do every day for yourself to create a life you love out of the life you have?
I think the best thing I do every day is force myself to keep being creative and, you know, thinking of different crazy ideas I want to create, because it's the idea I had for the day.
Well,
I think that's, for me at least, I can't speak for others, but it keeps me excited about life.
that's beautiful. Well, John, thank you for sharing your journey with us, and I can't wait to see more of your art around Cleveland.
Thank you. I look forward to it.